with the ex-president of Brazil, Michel Temer, former president of Brazil. Also Antonio Patriota, the Brazilian ambassador in the UK and Northern Ireland. Also Lord Evans of Zealand, Director General of the UK in Brazil. Also João Doria, the founder and co-chairman of LIDE and former governor of São Paulo. Elmar Nascimento, federal MP, second vice president of the Chamber of MPs in Brazil. Also João Doria Neto, CEO of LIDE Global. And finally, Breno Silva, president of LIDE UK. I would also like to mention that we've got here Felipe Melo, a minister and consular of the Brazilian embassy in the UK, Carlos Portinho, senator of the Brazilian Republic, Arnaldo Jardim, a federal MP, Juliano Pascoal, State Secretary of Finance in Rio de Janeiro, and Rosencleven Cansado, President of LOTES. We've also got Júlio Sesson, State Secretary of the International Relationships of São Paulo until 2022, and Patricia Ellen. She's the Secretary for Development of the Government of São Paulo between 2018 and 2022. I would like to remind you that this event has all its CO2 emissions neutralized by Ambipar. I would like to thank also the sponsors Itaú, BRB Bank, Loterge, NSI, North Star Investment Group, Shell, the government of Rio de Janeiro, Vale, Exvia. Also, we have the support from Acciona, Ambipar, Guardia Advogados, and Grupo FES, and media partners, Jovem Pan News, LIDE Magazine, and TV LIDE. The official operator of the event is Maringá Turismo, and this event is being streamed live to the entire world by the digital platforms of LIDE, by TV LIDE, tv.lide.com.br, by Poder 360, poder360.com.br, and by the Brazil Confidential portal, noticias.r7.com/Brazil Confidential. The coverage with interviews, photos, videos, and podcasts will be available on the website noticias.lide.com.br. I would like to thank as well the presence of the Brazilian and foreign journalists in this forum. And at the end of the forum, you will get a copy of the LIDE special magazine in Portuguese and English, and it covers the opportunities of business between UK and Brazil. So to start our forum, I would like to call the president of LIDE UK, Breno Silva, to make the initial remarks. Thank you, Carlos. Thank you, everyone. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. This is our third annual conference, LIDE UK Brazil. LIDE has been in London for 5 years. And we have started this work to foster relationships between the UK and Brazil. We've got an historical relationship between the two countries, and there's a lot of mutual respect. Before I start my opening statement, I would like to salute our President, Michel Temer. It's very prestigious to have him here every time, and in my opinion, the best president that Brazil has ever had. Also, Ambassador Antonio Patriota, thank you so much for your support. The Brazilian embassy in London carries out a very important work. Your team is very competent, Ambassador, and you represent Brazil really well. And also our chairman and founder, João Doria, and João Doria Neto as well. Thank you for everything. João Doria, thank you so much. So the world is facing a lot of complexity. So we need leaders that can combine pragmatism with goals. I believe all the events that are organized by LIDE, we can bring people who can think the future and shape the future for a better Brazil, a more international Brazil, a country that stands out internationally. We see that Brazil has been the cover of many magazines in a positive light on aspects such as environmental, social, and economic. So that really shows us that we need to be present in the international stages to talk about our countries and to foster connections with key players, important countries like the UK. So we need to make the most of our capacity for innovation, our capacity to produce, and also to combine that with the capacity that the United Kingdom has in order to promote and foster in mutual investments. I believe we can bring the two countries together and bring positive results for both countries. I believe that the UK can benefit a lot. Lord Evans, I believe the UK, by having a close relationship with Brazil, can benefit a lot. We've got a lot of ways, a lot of inputs that we can bring to the UK, and I believe this could be very positive for the two countries. I'm here every year, and I always say we can do better, we can do more. And this year is not an exception. With COP, I think the two countries have been in a closer contact, but I think we can do better in the industrial and financial sectors, also the green energy sector as well. We can do more. We have a very sophisticated sector in Brazil. The UK also has one, so we can keep in touch and have a closer proximity. Also, in terms of food security, I believe we import about 70% of what we consume. The UK also imports a lot, and I believe Brazil could be one of the main exporters to the UK. So I think we need to overcome also some points. So I recall on the first conference we had, we need to get an agreement to reduce the double taxation. This would be very positive for both countries. We had an initial agreement in the past, but we need to come back to that so that we can proceed, we can progress and strengthen the economic relationship between the two countries. Now, international cooperation is very important for us. Brazil understands the need to have a strong international collaboration and cooperation, and LIDE is the right place for that. So we are here to transform the dialogues, and we want to translate that into action, something that we can apply to foster the development of Brazil. So you can count with LIDE here in the UK, you can count on LIDE in Brazil as well. We want to be the bridge between the private sector. We are already that, we are that bridge already, but we want to continue to be that bridge at an international level. And it's really important that we understand that Brazil needs and must have a place at an international level. We are a very important country. We are the future. Thank you very much. Good morning. I wish you a great conference. Thank you, Breno Silva, President of LIDE UK. Now I will call the CEO of LIDE Global, João Doria Neto, for his remarks. Good morning, everyone. I would like to welcome you all, our Brazilian friends, but I think I will speak in English as a matter of respect for our people who have received here.
I know many of you will be in this part of the morning, some of you in the afternoon, but we really appreciate your participation here because this is an event where we put together leaders from different sectors in Brazil. We have leaders from the energy sector, industry, mining, and big sectors in Brazil here represented, as well as policymakers and authorities of these sectors, where you will have an opportunity to see how how many opportunities there are in Brazil. I add that maybe the turbulent times that the world and the geopolitics are at the moment can benefit Brazil. Brazil needs to find a corner and find its way in these harder waves, and Brazil is full of opportunities. So you will see that this is an event, this is a full day of new business opportunities to get together for debates. All the debates that we have here are proactive, and we have the journalists here exactly, and thank you very much for all journalists who come to these events of LIDE to give a higher range of what is spoken here, the debates that are spoken here in these events, so other people can understand, and other people, not only from Brazil, but from other countries, understand the opportunities in Brazil. And lastly, the opportunity to learn here, because we're talking about at least 4 different sectors with people, speakers, who are leaders of these sectors and know profoundly their sectors in Brazil. And I can guarantee you that the debates will be very high level, because we got a little bit of these conversations yesterday at our dinner, and the debate in a dining table was already high level, so I'm sure the debate here will be even better, and it's a place where we always learn more than we knew before the event. So what I suggest to all of you is, in every opportunity, try to exchange cards, even with people that you might already know, but connect to them in a more profound level, because everybody is here, mainly, specifically the Brazilians that are here. They are here with an objective. They want to do business. They're looking for either investments to take to Brazil, or partnerships for new companies in Brazil, or knowledge and technology transfer. Nobody is here just because they wanted to come to London for a few days. Everybody here has an objective, so I'm sure that if you take your time to meet some people during the coffee, or people who are next to you, you will find good opportunities, and good things always happen when you start connecting with each other. So once again, thank you very much, everybody, for being here. I hope you can stay the full day. I attest that it's worth it. It's a little bit tiring because we talk about lots of topics, but it's worth it staying from the beginning to the end, and I'm sure everybody here will leave with more than they arrived. So have an excellent event, and good speeches to our speakers here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, João. I would like to invite the founder and co-chairman of LIDE, former mayor and ex-governor of São Paulo, João Doria.
Good morning, everybody. Back to the Portuguese. Muito obrigado pela presença de todos.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. This is the 4th conference we have here in London to put British and Brazilian entrepreneurs together, as well as the authorities. We are live on TV LIDE. We still have a small audience. It's still very early in the morning in Brazil. And Carlos Marques will let you know about how many people are following us. Probably we'll have more than 4,000 people between 11 a.m. and midday. So a lot of people, much more people than we have here. So thank you so much again for being here. On behalf of everyone, without naming anyone, you don't need to repeat the names every time. So on behalf of everyone, I would like to salute the former president of our republic. We remember him for his great work when he was leading the country. So please, let's put our hands together for our president, Michel Temer. On behalf of Johnny and the entrepreneur group, I would like to thank as well the journalists from Brazil and also from the UK who are here present with us. And I would like to thank as well those who managed to follow this event online from Brazil and from other European capitals. Johnny and Breno mentioned the importance of the UK in Brazil in the context of the bilateral relationship. We'll talk about food security, energy transition, mining, oil, gas, gambling, platforms, and the economic bilateral relationship that our ambassador, Antonio Patriota, he has been very important in that. He used to be chancellor. He was a brilliant chancellor, I shall add, from Brazil. He will be able to give you more details about that. We're very happy with the expansion of LIDE in international terms. We started yesterday the 27th unit in Romania. We will start our 28th new unit in Madrid, Spain. So we will close 2025 with 28 international units, and by next year we'll have 35. So in addition to those that we have in Brazil, in 23 states in Brazil. So we are only yet to be present in 4 states. There's only 4 states in Brazil left. So thank you everyone, to all our British guests. It's really a great honor to be here with you. So other than that, I would like to wish you a great event. Good morning. Thank you very much. Thank you, Governor João Doria. Now I would like to give the word to Lord Evans of Zealand for his opening remarks.
Bom dia. I apologise for not delivering this speech in Portuguese. I am currently learning, but I'm a slow learner. It's such a pleasure to be here this morning in this esteemed company. My job as UK trade envoy to Brazil is to strengthen the commercial bridge between the two countries, supporting British business to thrive in Brazil while welcoming Brazilian investment into the United Kingdom. It's such a privilege to be here this morning amongst this gathering of leaders from Brazil and the UK. And thank you to the entire LIDE board for the invitation, and I look forward to leaving with more than I arrived, as has so eloquently just been said. The UK sees Brazil not only as a strategic partner, but as a key ally in Latin America, to help to shape global trade in an unsettled world. Industrial innovation, sustainable development will all come through our relationship. That relationship is built on shared values that go back a long way: mutual respect, a commitment to unlocking economic opportunity for our people. The UK recently launched new trade and industrial strategies to drive growth in sectors where we lead globally: clean energy, digital technology, life sciences and financial services in particular. And these are areas of mutual benefit where Brazil's ambitions and capabilities align very directly with those of the UK. I was fortunate enough to visit Brazil recently, and wow, what a country. I came away, if I could be, more enthused than I was when I was appointed to this role. I witnessed firsthand how UK businesses navigate Brazil's evolving market, as well as Brazilian investors expanding across the UK. I met with leaders at FIESP, Britcham, and pioneering UK-based businesses like Oxitec and Halion, whose work in public health and sustainability exemplifies how British innovation contributes to Brazil's national priorities and global leadership. We're committed to support UK businesses who operate in Brazil and Brazilian businesses expanding in the UK. We want to help businesses navigate regulatory frameworks, facilitate trade missions and deepen engagement with Brazilian ministries. The UK stands ready to be a dynamic and can-do partner, and I absolutely agree, we have to do better. As Brazil prepares to host COP30, the UK is proud to support initiatives that place sustainability at the heart of economic growth. The Reforestation Fund, backed by British investors, has already mobilised 10 times its initial funding, restoring over 10,000 hectares and planting nearly 15 million trees. This is proof that forests can be profitable assets that climate finance can deliver real returns for. We're also investing in Brazil's bioeconomy, a sector with the potential to generate over 224 billion in annual industrial revenue. Through UK Pact, the Amazon Fund and Partnership for Forests, we're helping to build inclusive, sustainable supply chains that empower local communities and protect biodiversity. This forum builds on the strong foundations of UK-Brazil trade and investment. But, as I've said, we must go further. It's a chance to identify and dismantle the practical barriers that still stand in the way by aligning Brazilian growth, ambitions and the UK's industrial strengths. We can drive major progress, more deals, more jobs, and more innovation to both the UK and Brazil. So, to everyone here and to the business communities we represent, the UK is not just open for business, we're proud to be already on the tools with you, building the future with Brazil, and we're ready to do even more. Obrigado.
Thank you, Lord Evans. E nesse momento eu vou chamar aqui para sua saudação no púlpito o embaixador do Brasil junto ao Reino Unido da Grã-Bretanha.
I'd like to invite the ambassador Antonio Patriota, ambassador of Brazil to the UK.
Excelentíssimo senhor Michel Temer, ex-presidente da República.
Thank you, meus amigos que estão aqui presentes. João Dória, gostaria de saudar o presidente of LIDE, Deputy Marco Nascimento. I am in English, yeah. All of the guests from London, Breno Silva, journalists. I'm very glad to greet all the political leadership here today, committed with the strengthening of these relationships. Please, can I share with you some reflections about Brazil's position in the world, especially the bilateral strategical positions with the UK. The main themes of the international agenda, it's important to say that since the beginning of Lula's mandate, the coherence and consistency have returned to being respected in our external foreign policy, allowing us to articulate our international relationships based on three main principles: democracy, sustainability, and peace. So we celebrate this year 200 years of diplomatic relationships with the UK. We are finalizing our strategic partnership, where we will drive more partnership in trade, human rights, defense, cultural aspects. This document will be a route for strengthening our cooperation. Brazil and UK are democracies. They are amongst the top 10 democracies in the world. And not forgetting the geographical differences, we share values, peace, sustainability, respect to international right. And these principles guide our cooperation in several areas. And in this context, we also strengthen the trade exchange. And I say that it doesn't make sense having two big economies being the 25th and 26th in the commercial partnership. We aim to finish and sign an agreement of free trade between Mercosur and European Union. We have only just signed an agreement between Mercosur and EFTA, which is a group of countries, smaller countries, including Switzerland, Norway, and Iceland. And in this new context, the UK will be the only European country with significant importance without this agreement with Mercosur. So it's very important that we start seeing this issue with seriousness. I am pleased to note that the trade and private sector Minister Chris Wyant, who was in São Paulo recently, just like Lord Evans, he has raised these hypotheses. And he's very enthusiastic about it. I also wanted to make a note that we had recently here for the financial and energy sectors, the Secretary Vario Durigan, and we had really successful meetings with government officials and other significant partners. I also remind you that London, apart from a financial center, beautiful city with a great impact on strengthening opinion and forming opinion due to its influence, its media influence. We know that every diplomat reads the Financial Times, listens to the BBC, reads The Economist. Besides that, it's a city which is taking a very important position in the climate issues. So this year we had the London Climate Action Week, which was a celebration of Brazil in a way. We had André Lago here, who will soon be the president of COP30, Marina Silva, Sônia Guajajara, and they're always welcome here. And I end this speech by reminding you that we are counting down to COP30. We will have the Prime Minister there signing a new strategic partnership. Prince William and the royalty are behind these environment issues. Prince William will receive the Earthshot Prize in Brazil. One of the candidates is the Tropical Forest Forever Facility, one of the contenders. It's one of the initiatives of great visibility which will be announced in Belém, and it unites not just the countries with tropical forests, but also potential sponsors. We are here trying to avoid donor and recipient. We're trying to bring a new perspective to this action where everybody is a winner. So in this context of strengthening the bilateral cooperation, bringing good perspectives to the next year, I greet you all very sure that we are having a positive outcome after this conference. Thank you.
Muito obrigado.
Thank you, Ambassador Patriota. And now I would like to invite the ex-president of Brazil, Michel Temer. I would like to greet everyone and make a few observations. It's interesting how I note that throughout time, LIDE doesn't have an internal constitution or a rule to follow, but everything works really well always in every meeting that LIDE organizes. We see this integration between the businesses and the public sector in Brazil and every other country where LIDE is. This is really interesting to see this incredible identity between the organization of LIDE and the UK. The UK also doesn't have a written constitution, but it has... do I have more time then? Thank you very much, João Dória. I wanted to say that the UK, similarly, does not have a written constitution. It has rules. There are no written rules, but everything works with an extraordinary certainty. Maybe because people follow the rules and they obey the customs that have been established throughout time in the UK. And in the same way, it's happened to LIDE. Since João Dória and his friends and his team started a national to start with and then international organization, we now have 27 countries going up to 35 countries in it. It's the same with the UK, very similar organization, João, that we have here in LIDE. And it's interesting how the cultural habits is so significant, so important, that I wanted to mention a very interesting point of the history of the UK to bring an example to our country. Brazil has huge potential, as was said here by Ambassador Patriota, the most varied potentials, not just for the present, but for the future. Brazil is always a country of the future. And if it's already been producing extraordinary effects, we will continue to do so as a country. But the UK can be an example for us. For example, the parliamentary organization. Do you know that the parliament here happened very naturally when the George I was the king? He didn't speak English, he spoke German and Latin. And there was an MP at the time, a parliamentary member, who was at the entry of the British Parliament, and he used to speak German and Latin. So he would leave Parliament, approach the king and talk to the king, go back to Parliament, and then he would say whatever the king wanted him to say. And then slowly Parliament started to take over some government functions, some executive functions, very naturally, without any pressure, let's say, without any resistance that that democracy demands. Another important, interesting comment, which could be an example for us, is that the opposition in democracy is always fundamental in any country, very important. But in the UK takes it more seriously, and I notice there isn't a compulsory rule. It's simply the way things are done, because certainly opposition in democracies, they exist to help govern that country, it's not just to oppose it. And in the UK, you have the shadow cabinet. What do? It's the opposition, and they are supervising the government of the time. And when I say the word opposition, and I say that it's important in democracy, it's because it contradicts, it contests, it objects, it resists. Sometimes I will confess that in my own mandate, I heard several criticisms, and I would take them into consideration. And to be honest, sometimes I would invite members of the opposition and say, this issue that you brought is not a problem of my mandate, it's a problem of the state, of the country. And sometimes when there were no radical positions, when there was understanding of the institutional goals, when they understood that they were there to help govern, they would vote in favor. And that's not by chance that in doing so, we were able to change lots of positive actions in our country. So I have always based myself on the example of the UK. It's an extraordinary example of democracy, and we should be drinking at this source and take these concepts back to Brazil. You see that when you see debates, they are conceptual debates, and they are fundamental to good governance. We should never feed radicalism. We should feed the polarization of ideas, of concepts and programs, because it's natural. You have this dynamic in democracy, those in government and those contesting. So they should, yes, debate and propose different programs and different contests. That's natural. So, João, I wanted to make this connection between what LIDE does, because LIDE shows that it follows its authority, but it also follows it democratically. It starts on time, it ends on time, and there is a note here saying, "Do not go beyond your time." But this is an extraordinary organization, because this is the result of agreement and knowledge, and it's important to have such an extraordinary organization. And this is very similar to what we see in the UK. And having said that, I would like to greet you, greet LIDE, greet everyone who are paying close attention. I can see how much close attention people are paying, how well people are listening to what the speakers are saying. So this connection and this institutional reality and connection between the UK and LIDE, I wanted to bring this concept to you. And without going beyond my allocated time, I would like to wish we all, as being the case, a very productive day, not just in terms of integration between the UK and Brazil, but integration between public figures and businessmen, which can bring positive outcomes in Brazil. The example I have just mentioned of the customs of the UK, which brings naturality to the organization, that's what we should take to Brazil to avoid radicalization, but also welcoming the polarization of ideas and concepts and healthy discussions. Thank you very much.
Obrigado, presidente Michel Temer. Presidente, aliás, pedindo desde já desculpas pela inversão.
I apologize for the change in the program. We will have the same person with us. We have the MP Gilmar Nascimento. He will be present at the next panel, but I would like to call him on stage. Good morning, everybody. I would like to greet our great former President Michel Temer, and it's a pleasure to have participated in your government, and we are very happy to see so many positive initiatives which were carried out at the time, and we had a lot of continuity after your term. And if you had continued, I'm sure Brazil would have had a great legacy. And I greet here my fellow MPs who are here. We have Governor João Doria. Congratulations for this initiative. And LIDE is always ahead of its time, and we can bring people who are able to be the protagonists of a different environment for Brazil. I congratulate Ambassador Antonio Patriota. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to have you here. And in the next panel, I'll talk about energy transition. And I must say that the first time I came in touch with this project was when I was designated a rapporteur of a project from Petrobras, which we were discussing in Parliament. And the more I study, the more I learn. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to participate in a presentation with the national president of Shell, Mr. Cristiano, who's here with us. And I understand that we know very little when we hear people of such caliber speaking. And I ask on behalf of the lower chamber, the upper chamber, and I asked them to prepare a presentation, but I must say that I will actually speak from the heart. I won't follow it to the letter. And we have the productive sector, several initiatives that can contribute, such as this one, LIDE, in order to improve our environment for international investors and also for Brazilian investors as well. So I wish you all a great day with many debates, and I'm sure we will bring a more positive and even better environment for everyone working in Brazil. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much. And now we are reaching the end of our opening panel, and I ask MP Omar Nascimento and also Breno that you take your places. Michel Temer, Ambassador Patriota, Lord Evans, and Governor João Doria. Please take your seats now, and we will start the first panel momentarily. Very well. I would like to tell you all that we will have the Forum LIDE Brasil Italy between the 24th and 25th of November in Rome. So please show our institutional video for LIDE Italy. Very well. Now we shall start the first panel here about energy and energy transition, the role of Brazil in an energy transition globally. And now I would like to invite to the stage Juliano Pascoal, Secretary of the Rio de Janeiro State Treasury. I also invite Cristiano Pinto da Costa, President of Shell Brazil. And I kindly ask Samir Arap to come to stage, Executive Vice President of Legal Department of Vale. Now I give the floor to Johnny to give us an explanation as to how this first panel will take place. Thank you very much, Carlos. Welcome everyone who is going to present in this panel. I believe that in our meeting at Shell yesterday and after that, we had new themes to debate here. So it has generated discussions. So this is a panel about energy and energy transition at lead missions all over the world, in India, in the Middle East, and other places. Energy and energy transition have been a key point, a key interest point for investment. And not just that, we have a lot to do for energy in Brazil and to make the most of this. Just to give you an overview how it's going to work, we have the presentations from each one of you. You can sit or come to the lectern. Perhaps to present, you could come to the lectern because I know some of you have slides. You will see your time. So you have 10 minutes for each presentation. And as soon as we end, we will have about 30 to 40 minutes to Q&A. And here we can sit down and discuss. And Carlos, that's the idea. We may have provocations in order to debate and deepen these topics. So I incentivize you to raise your hand if you want to ask a question. So if you have any issues, please raise your hand, ask for the floor. We can take you the mic at any time for us to bring the question to the panel for debate and Q&A. So we have a very focused debate, and reminding all of you that with all these learnings, we have also the press. So it is a very timely space to deal with these topics, which will continue with us. And we are live streaming to several channels. All the talks will be held in Portuguese. Therefore, those who are using translation, please continue to use the translation. If we have any other messages, you are aware of it, Q&A, your time. So I wish you all a very good presentation. So I also invite our first speaker for the morning, Vice President Executive of Vale, Samir Arap. Please, you have the floor, Samir. Feel free to come to the stage. Good morning, everyone. First of all, following our instructions, I greet you all. It is a great pleasure to represent one of the largest companies in the world in the sector, talking about energy transition and energy sector. This is a very key topic, and this is a great challenge, and that generates a lot of opportunities. And we have just to explain the role of Vale. So you know the brand, you know the company, but we don't understand also the business. Some people are not aware of it. Obviously, we are, but not everyone knows what we do. We have several areas. We work with metals, mining, metallurgic area, steel, and we exploit the greatest input of the planet in Carajás. So we invite you all to come to Paraupebas to see this legacy, this heritage that we have, which makes available high-grade iron ore. So we invest in 3 types of minerals, and now I talk about energy transition. So high content iron ore from Minas Gerais and Carajás. We also produce nickel and copper. So nickel and copper are fundamental for energy transition and also for EV vehicles. And iron ore, we have the partnership of Vale. So what's our agenda? We want to decarbonize. How can we do that worldwide? We should have agreements with the metal sector all over the world. So how do you know where we are? So this sector is metallurgy and metalworking is responsible for 8% of emissions worldwide. So Vale, with its R&D, has created a flexible portfolio of products with innovation, avoiding the use of water and tailing dams, which reminds us of the tragedies that took place in Brumadinho and Mariana. We are working with circular mining, reprocessing the mining in a dry process. So we have a system in which 10% of our iron ore production has this circular production. But moreover, through this flexible portfolio of products, Vale is able to develop what we call briquette, which is developed through a efficiency of 10% with these pallets, these briquettes, in emissions of carbon of our autoclaves. So we have more than 50 agreements. We have 5 mega hubs in Saudi Arabia and Emirates, Oman, US, and Brazil. And just is strengthening that one of the oldest refineries belongs to Vale. It was founded in 1902. We bought it here in the UK, in Wales, later on. But it is an honor to have Vale Base Metals based here. So working very closely with our partners and with our end clients, understanding how our clients can develop high quality products, especially high grade iron ore, in order to reduce in 10% our carbon emissions in our blasting furnaces. But we don't stop there. Through our mega hubs, we are able to work with sustainability projects, always with focus on economic sustainability. We can't just invest in the social area. We have to be economically viable. And here I look through Vale inside. How can we reach our energy efficiency? And I'm absolutely sure that Mr. Cristiano will be able to talk about this in his presentation. We have a series of studies in order to replace fossil fuels. One of the activities ongoing is to replace fossil fuels using biodiesel and ethanol in all our transport systems, not just the land ones, but railway as well. And moreover, through our maritime transportation, shipping, we have discussions with the International Maritime Organization, the IMO. So together with the maritime industry, we would allow to build more efficient ships and vessels using ethanol. So this is the contribution Vale is making through investments in research and development, R&D. So talking about sustainability and not just operational efficiency, either through our ore, high quality nickel, or through copper, Vale, ladies and gentlemen, is now responsible, or maybe it is the largest company or the most effective one in protecting the environment. So Carajás Forest. I would like to make a few comments. So the Carajás Forest, for those who are not familiar, is composed of a mosaic of 900,000 hectares. What is that? It means 6 times the city of London, 5 times the city of São Paulo, just with forest, untouched forest, protected by Vale with a partnership with ICMBio. And throughout the last 3 years, with the competent authorities, we are able to prevent the invasion, illegal mining, and attacks of 650 instances of criminal attempts. So Vale is able to utilize 3% of that mosaic in Carajás. So in 900,000 hectares, only 3% is used for mining, and it is a sustainable, responsible mining, working with the local communities and trying, above all, as the CEO has told us, providing an economical means to the forest. So one cannot just create a model in which you don't have an economic viability. We have to invest in the community. And as I was talking to the Secretary of the Rio de Janeiro State, we invested in sustainability. So many projects with urban mobility, sanitation, water, culture, arts, education. Why? Because all employees of Vale, they live in the surrounding areas. If we don't invest and look after them, who is going to do that? So it is our commitment, our role, our responsibility, not just to deal with the climate and be responsible, but live with the local communities and work in effective partnerships. So I didn't show some slides as an option, and I decided just to talk with you without showing the slides because the presentation is institutional. I could just, in the few minutes I have, to talk about reliability and our relationships with the scopes of 1, 2, and 3 to reduce carbon emissions, the transition of metals led by high-grade iron ore, nickel, and copper. And Vale is a listed company, so we have been studying investments in new types of minerals. It could be lithium, uranium, and others. So Vale hasn't decided yet, but it will work in an efficient manner. So climate change, we're working very strongly to decarbonize our operations, working with our clients. And here I'd like to show the Carajás Forest. This part in green was the state of Pará, where Vale is located for over 40 years. And we had this presence for 83 years. You can see the Pará state exploited in the white area, and this is the area protected by Carajás. So we are very proud as Brazilians. So ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of my presentation, and I am available to clarify your questions. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Sami Arap. Now I would like to invite Cristiano Pinto da Costa, the president of Shell Brazil, for his presentation. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, João Dori, for the invitation. It's a great pleasure to be here, especially in this city, which is where the headquarters of the company that I represent is located. It's really important for me, this city. So I lived here for 13 years. I have dual citizenship, Brazilian and British, and my children were born here. So it's always a great pleasure to be back. I'll start the presentation focusing on possibly the biggest challenge humanity has ever faced. So we need to carry out an energy transition, and at the same time we need to deal with an increasing demand for energy in the upcoming decades. So there are many factors that are behind this issue. So physical wars and so forth, so to speak, create larger demand. Other thing that is driving the demand is the fact that there will be 2 billion more people by 2070. So there's also a relationship between the energy consumption per capita and the quality of life, and also the global temperatures keep raising. We need to reverse that, and technology, accelerated technology, will be a great factor to address those issues. So I mentioned energy security. Energy is a sine qua non factor for development of humanity. It's a pillar of its development. And what we have been observing in this sector is that the demand has been increasing, and that's associated with the advent of AI. So you can see here at the center of this slide. So an AI video, a 6-second AI video, consumes the same level of energy that 6 mobile phones require to get recharged and 2 laptops. So we need to deal with this increased demand that is raised by AI. We see that energy used by data centers in the US will be the main focus, the main pillar for the use of energy. So we need to address that in a safe manner, in a competitive manner, and with a low CO2 level of emissions. We also need to talk about energy efficiency. In my opinion, this is not spoken about enough, and from a regulatory perspective, we can change the behavior of people, companies, and governments, and that way we can improve the levels of energy efficiency. Now, Brazil has a power matrix that it's cleaner than many of the most advanced economies in the world. So if you look at this graph here on the slide, so green, red, and yellow, if you look at any other economy, you will see that the colors will be much darker than the graph that represents Brazil. So Brazil has done a lot of the necessary homework to address all these issues. Though our main challenge is in the transport sector, heavy vehicles, so large lorries, and also the maritime and aviation sectors. This applies to the world as a whole. So these areas of the economy are much harder to electrify. So we have been investing a lot in biofuels. The studies carried out by Shell show that we can triple the demand for biofuels between 2030 and 2050. So that's why we keep investing in this area, because it's an area that has a lot of potential to help with decarbonization. Now, speaking about oil and gas, even though the energy transition is ongoing and needs to be accelerated, oil and gas will still be necessary to give power, to provide us with power for the upcoming decade. So many studies carried out recently. So the International Agency for Energy, they have reviewed their position and they review the need for the oil and gas still for a few more decades. So oil and gas will still continue to be necessary for the upcoming decades. So I would like to mention some points in relation to Brazil. Brazil became one of the largest producers of oil and gas. We are a reliable producer. We have a competitive cost of production, and as the graph here at the bottom left, this really shows that that's a fact. We have a carbon intensity per barrel that is much lower than the average in the world. You can see here in the little graph here on the left. So every Brazilian barrel that replaces a barrel with a higher carbon intensity, that represents a positive result to the general CO2 world emissions. In Brazil as well, every 3 barrels, though, these are numbers from the Brazilian Institute for Oil, each 3 barrels that are produced, 2 of them, they are retained by the tax burden. So the tax burden in Brazil is much higher than in other countries. So in the US, for instance, for every 3 barrels that are produced, 1 of them is consumed by taxation. Here on the top right hand side, if you don't invest in oil and gas, the production over time will decline between 7 and 10%. So in just a few years, if you don't invest in this sector, the entire production will just disappear, will collapse. One of the concerns that we have in Brazil is that if you don't reverse the investments or the trend of investments, in a few decades, Brazil can become a net importer of oil and gas. So in 2024, oil was the main export of Brazil, but that can be reversed if there's no investment. And here at the bottom, each bar shows you the decline in wells being drilled. So there has been a decline of about 100 wells per year. To show you again the position of Brazil, Shell, in Brazil is proud to be here for many years, more than 100 years. We are present in areas such as upstream, downstream, and the production of energy in general. This represents our presence in Brazil. Brazil nowadays is one of the 5 top countries for Shell. A lot of the production in Shell comes from Brazil. We have a provision. We predict that in the upcoming 5 years there will be an investment of 30 billion real. We've had recently one of the largest investments that Shell has carried out in Brazil for the past few years as well. I mentioned as well the participation of Shell in gas and in oil and gas, but we are also present in the biofuels, in gas and power. We have a cooperation with a local operator, also in Rio de Janeiro. We are the 2nd largest company that invests in NBS. Shell believes in the carbon credits for the purposes of reforestation, and we support Article 6 of the Paris Agreement that puts a global price on carbon as a way to promote the energy transition. And we invest 500 million real every year for R&D. There are more than 1,600 investigators, researchers working in that sector in Brazil. A great deal of that investment is associated with energy transition and in the research of low carbon emission fuels. Finally, I would like to conclude by saying that the energy demand will continue to grow. That's driven by population growth and AI. Brazil is a frontrunner in the energy transition, and so we have an opportunity to advance all sources of energy in parallel. I believe it would be a mistake for Brazil to accept the narrative that we only need to use one energy source or another energy source. But in the global context, I would say that Brazil can progress in all those fronts at the same time. Also, the oil and gas sector plays an essential role in the Brazilian economy. Uh, the Agency for Oil and Gas in Brazil believes it will still be very important in the coming decades. Technology will play a big role for unlocking the low carbon energy and solutions. 15 years ago, technologies were not at the right pace, going at the right pace for that, but now they are. And just one final remark. I work in an international company. The capital allocation as such is important to attract investment to Brazil. So Brazil needs to take into consideration fiscal regulatory stability as essential points to ensure that I can continue investing in Brazil for other 100 years and to maintain Shell in Brazil for another 100 years. Thank you very much.
Obrigado ao Cristiano Pinto da Costa.
Thank you, Cristiano Pinto da Costa, for your presentation. It's a good opportunity to mention that even though it's very early in Brazil, we have 600 viewers via LIDE TV. So it's a number that it's very relevant because it's still very early in Brazil. So I would like to ask Juliano Pascoal to come to the stand. He's the Secretary of State for Finance in Rio de Janeiro. Good morning. I would like to salute everyone, all protocols observed, but I would like to particularly salute our MP. I'm very honored to be here along with really important leaders such as Cristiano, people who are aware of the importance of the energy transition in Brazil. As a representative of the government of Rio de Janeiro, I need to talk about the importance that has for Brazil, but also how much the energy transition is crucial to the state of Rio and how that influences the balance sheet of our state. So I will try to respect the allocated time, but I would like to mention how the energy transition is an important aspect of our agenda. It's no longer an environmental issue. Energy transition is now as well an economic issue. For our finance department, that's a weekly issue. We debate that every week. So there's a bridge between environmental aspect and the economic aspect and how that translates into our work agendas. A second aspect I would like to talk about is that some of the challenges of that agenda for us public workers and how that is an issue as well for the private sector, how Brazil has been addressing that from a budgetary perspective. And I would also to say that Rio is a very important state for the production of oil and gas, and you know how important that is for our budget and how Rio is observing that transition. So we need to reach cleaner renewable energy, while at the same time the main source of income for us still remains in oil and gas. So articulating these 2 points is a challenge for us. So energy transition is a reality for the world, for Brazil as well. And of course, it's no longer optional. It's an economic necessity. And today is also guiding the choice of consumers. So we can no longer ignore that. So I mean the private sector, because the real boss of the private sector is the customer, the client. So because we know that the client now gives priority to energy transition, they take that into consideration when they acquire goods and services. As such, the private sector needs to take that into consideration, and I'm very sure that's being done in Brazil. This first graph, it's really important because it shows us that up until 2050, we'll have the net zero. So what will be produced in terms of fossil fuels needs to be balanced out by renewals. So as per the Paris Agreement, we would need, up until 2050, we need to reduce the global temperatures by 1.5 degrees Celsius. So for that, we need to produce half of what we are producing right now in order to reach that goal. So it's a big challenge that we need to face. Here's the graph. So Brazil, naturally, as it has already been mentioned by our president of Shell, Brazil is really important. It's a reference when it comes to renewable energy. In 2024, the production of energy by wind and solar sources represented 25% roughly of our energy production. To give you an idea, we now surpassed 35 gigatons of energy produced. 35 giga in aeolic and wind energy. This has been released by the Ministry of Energy. So we are a giant in the renewable sector. We made that choice a long time ago, and we are an example for the entire world. A great challenge in that regard, and I would like to send this message to the public and private sectors, and also to society as at large. We need to understand how we will bridge that gap between public and private sectors, and especially when it comes to the decarbonization. So when it comes to carbon credits, how could we create new incentives? And how we articulate that with the challenges. So one of the problems is it's just the numbers. We are not sure about whether there is a consensus on the credits. How can we keep that? Quantify that? So will the companies consider that as something that can be quantified? We still need to have legislation to surpass that problem. Another problem, which is very relevant as well, is the integration and integrability of those carbon credits. So there's a bridge between private and public sector, especially in the state of Brazil. So we need to understand how that mechanism would work to make sure that we can invest the resources, and how we can update the power matrix, but how we do that with reliability, so that the private sector can make safe investors, and how the public sector can make use of these resources to address the energy transition. Finally, we still don't know whether the credits will be taxable. So that creates uncertainty, and that's a problem for the efficiency aspect of the energy transition. Moving forward, and specifically talking about Rio de Janeiro, I need to mention the challenges that we are facing in Rio, and I believe Brazil should do the same. Our MP will probably talk about that. So what I'm talking about is the importance of a tax reform. so that the states can address the energy transition. Tax reform with the creation of the IBS shifts taxation from the origin to the destination. So Rio depends on oil and gas a lot. We are one of the major producers of that. And we need to reduce the dependency, because now taxation will be applied to the destination of oil and gas. So that's tremendous for Rio. So we need to face two challenges at the same time. First, of course, how can we reverse the income sources? And let me just show you here the numbers. So if we add up everything in terms of tax receipts, look, tax receipts and also indirect taxation as well, it's about 40% of our income. And if we are carrying out the energy transition, we will no longer gain access to these receipts. So if by inverting the taxation, so taxation will be applied to the destination, as such, we will no longer gain access to this tax income. So, as Government Claudio Castri has been saying, we need to find a way to surpass this problem. The world demands that, society wants the energy transition. Rio de Janeiro is a great producer of fossil fuels, and we need to make that transition.
We know the importance of natural gas in our energy grid, and we believe that this tool, natural gas, will be the actual transition for the clean energy transition. Gas is not yet a final clean element, but will be there during this transition. And lastly, to end, my time is up. Rio has been putting some incentives at place, Cristiano. Talking with the main sectors, we have some incentives for natural gas, production of biomethanol, and wind and solar energy. And I end my talk saying that it's important for us, for this reliable context, this credible context, it's important to have dialogue, constant dialogue. Us at the Secretary of Finance in Rio, we want to be a tool to generate positive outcomes to society. Thank you. Thank you, Juliano Pascoal, Secretary of Finance, and I wanted to invite for the stage the Deputy Elmar Nascimento. Good morning, everyone. I would like to thank you all for inviting, João Dória, for inviting me to take part in this panel. A big challenge, a big responsibility here among so many capable people. It's a pleasure to bring our vision from the National Congress about this topic. I also wanted to say that the first contact I had with energy was in 2021 when, through Minister Paulo Guedes, we had the project of privatizing Petrobras. It could have been a simple project, only dealing with authorizing privatization of the biggest Brazilian company, but it came alongside, as we say, as a few little elements where we had to overcome to approve this privatization. We had to revitalize the San Francisco River. And then from then, I dedicated myself to this topic. I started studying, researching, so that I could bring this knowledge to the legislation and bring about some state policies. Because this topic, energy, differently from the alternance of power should be constant through governments, so that the country can benefit from the changes and benefit the economy of the country as a whole. And in this process, I have met some problems, and I saw some gaps, things that should have been inserted in the government planning, in its energy plan. For example, I observed that several companies were using government subsidies, and they started having more profit from commercializing energy than from its main focus, and we decided to end these subsidies. On the other hand, we have a continental-sized country where we have space for several options of exploring energy sources. We are successful in being amongst the G20 countries in the best place in relation to regarding energy transition and renewable energy, without having that as a plan. And also considering what I said, considering the size of Brazil, which makes it important for every government to explore the regional qualities, so that the country can grow in a homogeneous context. It's important to not forget the hydroelectric companies in Brazil, which the small ones, such as such as the ones in the Paraná state, in the Central West, which participate to the grid, and gas, because regardless of having the biggest production of gas, Cristiano said recently, we have some difficulty in its distribution logistics. Brazil has gas in its littoral, but it doesn't have a transport system which is equipped to distribute these coastal areas. If on one hand, this has benefited the northeast coastal areas, taking advantage of its regional positioning and its ability to produce wind and solar energy. On the other hand, the lack of infrastructure to take that production to where it's needed, it's down to the consumer. And we now estimate that Brazil needs great investment, around 70 billion in transmission lines, in transport lines. And we wanted the same model to be used in the gasoducts. In Brazil, with the size that we only have half of the gas ducts that Argentina has. If we compare with the United States, it's a lot worse. 8,000 kilometers of gas ducts against 4 million kilometers in the United States. And that causes a deficiency in a sector that could be helping improving development in a great deal. So this issue of energy transition cannot be relegated to simply renewable energy investment, but also taking advantage of every type of energy production we can in our country. And now I wanted to say something that unfortunately happens in Brazil, and meetings like this can help us improve. In energy production sector, we have hydroelectrics, which are private, most private, and they are small in size, and they look after exploration of gas and on oil. They they show an ability to sit together and help the government create a safe legal environment so that they can grow. And I agree with what Cristiano said. There is space for everyone. We are growing. We are having an increased need for energy due to the growth of population and also artificial intelligence. There is a calculation saying that for each 1% of for every 1% of the GDP, we need 1.7 growth in energy production. So there is space for everyone. And it's a shame that these great actors, the private owners of hydroelectrics in Brazil, are not able to sit with the government. They are competing amongst themselves. And instead of behaving that way, everybody would be sitting together and growing. And we need to develop a better relationship between these private owners and the government. And it needs more ability to have a positive lobbying dynamics. And that's how solar was able to grow in Brazil. Yesterday we voted the MP 304. We voted using our mobile phones. We're still working here, but we can vote whilst being away. And in our text, which was approved the day before by Senator Braga, we had the possibility of bringing an improvement in generating electricity through investing in these thermoelectrics. The vote of yesterday benefited coal more than any other source, which is the most polluting sources, which is the one that was more benefited by this MP 304. So panels and conferences like this, with the participation of so many important people, decision makers and opinion leaders, coming together to allow this interaction between the private actors and public actors. We are proud to say that every good in Brazil, all of the great reforms we had in our country in the last few years, the tax reforms, social security, happened through the Congress's own effort. When our ex-president, was a favorable environment for that. And since then, the public actors have not been taking as much advantage of allowing Brazil to have a positive legislation to allow us to take advantage of our environment and become protagonists in this issue of energy transition. Thank you very much. Thank you, Deputy Omar Nascimento, and we are going to start our debate of our first panel, reminding you that we are open to questions from the audience. If anyone wants to ask any questions, please just raise your hand. Someone from our team will come to you, and please state your name and say who you want to address the question to. And I will start this debate with a question for Cristiano Pinto from Shell and also to Deputy Elmar. I wanted to know, how can we balance this debate between the need to have energy transition and the social impacts of decarbonization in countries which are still dependent on petrol, like Brazil? Before you answer, I just wanted to say we have 40 minutes for debate, which the time is already counting. We end this panel at 10:55, and I wanted to encourage you to ask questions so that we can make advantage of those here sitting. Please you can ask questions. Members of the panel can ask each other questions as well. There is a microphone there available. So I would like to ask this question to Cristiano and then the Deputy Elsmar. Thank you. I think the first point to answer your question is to recognize, acknowledge that there are several drivers, all very complexes, that we need to tackle at the same time during this demand of energy, the needs of investment, which can generate jobs and taxes, which can be diverted to the needs of that country or region. But at the same time, we need to reduce the use of carbon in the energy we consume. I think sometimes the debate, using the words of President Temer, sometimes the debate is too radicalized, too polarized, when in fact we need to do everything at the same time. We need public policies looking at making sure the investment in oil and gas is competitive, stable and long-term, because this is still a necessary source of energy. And as the Secretary of State said, very important to certain areas of the country, also acknowledging that there are other sources of energy that can be explored in Brazil. The debate of the equatorial margin shows that, but also encouraging new sources of energy. We have the biofuels, which was important, and we need to potentialize this capacity that Brazil already has in this area. We had advances in the regulatory landmark of wind and solar energy production and hydrogen as well. We need to recognize that. So I think my point here is that we should not choose one area. We should advance in every area, especially taking into consideration the competitive advantage Brazil has in relation to other nations. If you could, please, Deputy, also answer this question. I believe that it's very, very positive, all of these initiatives. They are very positive. Despite a constitutional principle of the alternance of power, I will reiterate that energy transition should be treated as a policy of state, and especially I would encourage the participation of the businessmen and the entrepreneurs. I remember when the ex-President Temer said about the Constitution, it's more about the comparison between the UK and observing some principles regardless of the Constitution. In Brazil, we have a culture that when we change government, we change laws, and then you change the formatting of the policies in important strategic sectors such as energy. And due to the culture of our investment policy, we need to keep on bringing this into legislation. And then sometimes we have some MPs, such as the Deputado Arnaldo Jardim mentioned, bringing incentives for future fields, bringing regional development, important regional development, despite the lack of participation of the public power. Where I come from, we have a plant called Sisal, which is very similar to Algarve in Mexico, and the CIMATEC system, which is a incredible research center, has been developing ethanol from Algarve, which is once costs a third of the ethanol extracted from sugarcane and corn. And they needed 25 million reais a year to invest, and they didn't have that. I tried to convince the government and the Ministry of Agriculture to invest, couldn't find it, but thanks to Shell, we have a plant in Bahia working together with CIMATEC to invest in this development, this research. So how can a country like Brazil overlook this type of development. But thanks to the private sector, we are able to advance in this. So I wanted to reiterate the importance of this synergy of the public sector and the private sector so that we can bring these policies that can survive beyond different government mandates.
We have a question from Deputy Arnaldo Jardim, and then talking about R&D and CISAL, I'd like Elmar to talk about a bit because it has been developed in Cimatec in Camaçari. I'll try to combine 3 questions here. First of all, I was going to ask about CISAL, Elmar. Can you talk about how the R&D at Cimatec has been developed to develop this type of field? And then I'd like Cristiano Pinto to talk about what he said, that Shell has been investing 500 million reais in Brazil in R&D. It's very rare to see a Brazilian company developing as much. And we need many international companies to do that in Brazil. So I wanted Cristiano to talk about it. And for Shell, this is very important. And concluding with Juliano, if the treasury or the governor of the state, the government of the state, if they could create any way for companies to invest more in R&D, I believe that that may be possible, and I think we could combine this. So CISAL, Cimatec in Camaçari, investments of Shell in R&D, and investments in this type of investment. So the first initiative we had in R&D with CISAL has taken place when we had the 4th plant in Camaçari. So CISAL has been developed through fibers, natural fibers for rugs and for construction materials, which were exported. And when Ford went there, they created a new product with the environment, which you don't know if you remember EcoSport vehicle. So from the fiber of CISAL, they would create a pallet, and then with this pallet, they would use that to construct the vehicle's panels and also the speed bumps. And with the CISAL, they started realizing that there were quite old machines that were very damaging for people, and it would actually cause serious harm and paralyze people because the machines were quite outdated. So now they hired Cimatec to carry out the studies and to see how CISAL could be exploited. And they found out that the juice could be used, and they would use for insecticides. And in Mexico, there's agave, which they use for tequila. So from there, they carried out a project of ethanol from CISAL, and they brought this to Shell, which bought the idea, and Cristiano can talk about it from the beginning and also with the current overview that we have. Just to give you an example, I talked about my presentation. We are investing some 500 million Brazilian reais. This is an example of what we can do when we have a legal framework which has helped us when we had the pre-sold and the opening of the market. So, and we could bring this R&D to Brazil. It's a PPP in this case, and I think this is a very positive example. So Shell decided not to build its own R&D, but recognizing the technical capability and the human capability that we have in current R&D, that we have Cimatec, Sinai, and others. We invest this 500 million via partnerships. We have over 20 R&D hubs, 40 projects ongoing, over 600 researchers working in our research. So 1/3 is dedicated to new technologies. So this bill MP Elmar has mentioned in Bahia, it has to prove the technology, so it may work, it may not work, and try to show economic viability in commercial scale of the conversion of sisal agave to generate ethanol, which could be competitive, but we have the social impact of bringing industry to a poor area of Brazil. So that's what we do. We invest 2/3 to oil and gas production to improve efficiency and decarbonize as well, reduce carbon emissions in our productions, and 1/3 goes to new technologies. So another interesting project in São Paulo State is to use the network, the distribution network for ethanol in the gas stations. We have a partnership with several companies, with Toyota and USP in São Paulo, and we are trying to convert ethanol in hydrogen for that to be used in the buses which transport our employees. So they may work or they may not work, but we believe that some of them may come to fruition. So, and we believe that they will help in the energy transition. Johnny, about incentives. So first of all, we don't have tax incentives so with the new law. So all states will have to manage with the taxes that they have, their current services and goods tax. And this is very important to understand for the sector. So we are very aware of this issue, and we have data centers which are a big issue in terms of energy consumption. And the secretary, in terms of that, in November, we had discussed a proposal for incentives for the sector, but they should include renewables. And we recognize that gas is still an energy that is not completely clean, but it can be considered as a transition energy source. So we want to incentivize this development in Brazil and to improve gas production, but we need to face this energy transition without being too radical. It must be addressed in an efficient manner for us to have good results for Brazil. So in oil and gas, we have specific benefits, and we have incentives for imports, and that provides discounts on the ICMS tax of 3% if we have import of equipment and R&D development. So we are trying to reduce this fiscal wars between states, and with the tax reform, the federal tax reform, we believe that even with the selective tax, which will tax more goods which are not producing as well, and for instance, sugars, oil and gas, so it will incentivize this clean energy mix. Okay? Great, Secretary. Thank you. And now the first question from the audience with MP Arnaldo Jardim. Hello, can you hear me? Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. In the opening session, we heard that the energy transition could be a vector to develop, for instance, the UK, England. In Brazil, we have the same priority as said by Lord Evans. So in Brazil, we have biofuels, we have the profile of renewables, and I would just like to focus on the strategic role of gas. And MP Elmar, he's the great leader of this issue in the Chamber of Deputies, and Senator Coutinho as well. And I'd like to ask Cristiano about the challenges of entrepreneurs. How do you think that we could improve things for gas to be more accessible in Brazil in terms of volume and cost? Because we know that comparatively, the natural gas is very expensive in Brazil. So MP Elmar, from these initiatives, in addition to those proposed to you in the network of pipelines, what initiatives could we have in order to make it more accessible, the gas issue? So Juliano has mentioned about the tax reform, and he talks about the local content as a transition issue. So how do the states, how can they make gas more accessible? Excellent question, MP Arnaldo. Maybe I'll divide into parts. So I'll talk about energy transition, challenges of natural gas in Brazil, and differences between gas in Brazil in terms of other countries in terms of pricing, and some other ideas of what we can do. Shell believes a lot in gas as a transition fuel. Perhaps is less relevant in Brazil, but more relevant globally, especially in Asia. In Asia, they use a lot of coal, a very high percentage, whereas gas has shown to be more doable, economically viable in a shorter term to replace coal and consequently reduce the carbon emissions from the energy mix. The current production of Shell, we have half hydrocarbonates and half gas. In Brazil, it's important to demystify certain issues. So the volumes in Brazil are different from the US or the Middle East. So I'll just give a few figures. So Brazil has 12 to 15 trillions of cubic feet. In the US, 200 to 300, and in the Middle East and Russia, 600 to 900. So we have a difference of scale. The more volume, the cheaper the cost. So this is the first issue. Second factor, in the US or the Middle East, they are on land. In Brazil, it's very concentrated in the pre-salt, so it's about 200 to more from the coastal areas and in deep waters. So producing, harvesting on land is much cheaper than offshore production. So this is an important difference which must be recognized. So thirdly, we talk about reinjection of gas in the pre-salt fields. So this is a very technical issue. Reinjection of gas is key, fundamental, is very difficult, very challenging to keep the pressure of an oil field. So the more you take out, it's like a pressure cooker. So the more you take, the less pressure you have. The less pressure, less you'll be able to take it in the future. So you have to inject water and gas. And that is carried out in a very studied manner, very technical manner to maximize the oil production and the revenues that we can generate with that field. So this is a very important thing, and that doesn't work with gas. So fourth issue is the grid, where we remove the gas. So we have 3 pipelines and they are 100% at capacity. If tomorrow any other operator would like to take more gas, they don't have room because physically all the pipelines are full. and we only have 3 built thus far because of cost and the difficulties and costs associated to it, and licensing as well, to create a pipeline of 200, 300 kilometers taking to the coast, and then he has to cross these areas, these coastal areas. So it's a very long-winded and costly process. So MP Omar mentioned that the grid, the distribution grid, the transportation of pipelines that we have in Brazil, it's inferior in comparison to others. So kilometers of pipelines per square meter. So it's 30 to 40 times lower than Argentina, for instance, and the US and UK. So Brazil needs to improve that. So my view, I've been working in this for over 10 years. Sometimes we see oil and gas as a single thing, but they are very different commodities, and Brazil needs to have policies specific to gas, a regulatory framework in order to foster exploration, trade, transportation, and distribution, and we haven't been able to achieve that yet. I acknowledge what MP Omar has said. Industry is a bit at fault because we haven't engaged as much with government. We have an opportunity. We have studies ongoing trying to bring proposals to the federal government. Thank you very much, Cristiano. I'll give the floor to Breno. He has a question. I think the MP was going to complement something. Just to say, Arnaldo, as you said, that we should have the same form of treatment with different energy sources. So we have different frameworks. For instance, for renewables, we have the demand in the southeast, but it is generated in the northeast, and the taxpayer pays for that. So when you have a thermoelectric plant to take gas, you don't have that. So the business company, the producer, has to actually create all the pipelines, and that's impossible. So it works, for instance, like a shopping mall. What makes it work, a shopping mall? It's all these anchor stores. They make it viable, and then they make it possible for smaller stores to operate. So you need a thermoelectric plant to make it viable, an investment of the pipelines. And what we defend in the National Congress is that what we have to generate energy, you should treat in the same manner as the gas pipelines. Either you have the taxpayers paying for that, or you provide the same treatment for gas pipelines as you give to other means of energy. And then we'll have other functions for gas, not just to generate energy. You can use in hospitals, in industries, and to using the main collective transportation, improving urban mobility. So I think things complement each other. So unfortunately, in Brazil, we have a lobby prevailing upon common sense, and I think things will be better resolved if we employ more common sense. Thank you, MP. And Breno, you have the floor. I apologize. I'd like to make a comment, a request, and a question, which may become 2 questions. So Brazil produces a large amount of renewable energy, and it has installed capacity and an enormous potential. And I think that we are not delivering energy security yet. We have seen several episodes showing us that we need more investment, and we need a better holistic view in terms of regulation in the sector. So each sector is regulated independently of each other, and we need to discuss more this integration in the energy sector between the various sources of energy, wind, solar, and others. due to the installed capacity and the potential, we have to work with the demand. And one of the key activities we may be able to develop is AI. So Brazil cannot be left behind. So I had the opportunity to talk about AI because I come from the technology sector, and I think that we need to make steps forward. I'm very happy to see that Rio de Janeiro is presenting a proposal, and I think that needs to be made. So MP Elmar, Arnaldo Jardim, if you can take this discussion, I know that Congress is discussing, but we need to make steps forward. We can't miss this opportunity. We have people, we have energy, we have land, we have everything that's necessary, and we need to lead. So we have Paraguay, our neighbor, and they are making steps forward. So we need to be prominent in the region and worldwide. And my question, which may become to, I'll talk about gas as well, because I think it's very important, but it's another point. So we cannot have energy transition without mining, as it has been said, and a business opportunity. So the metal works in Europe are slowly dying because of the energy transition. So the steel industry is suffering, the metallurgy, metalworking, because of gas. And Brazil has a potential to make the most of this. So we can recover the steel industry. It generates a lot of jobs, and we can think about this sector. So could you talk about this in terms of energy transition, gas? You mentioned that is there are other types of technologies, and if you talked about gas, but if you can talk about gas used to foster other industries in Brazil and recover our industry development.
Thank you for the question. I'll try to summarize by mentioning some aspects. So first, Vale has an investment vehicle that's worth about 1 billion real, focused on technology and innovation, including AI. And João, I would like to invite Lide to allow Vale to expose to you all the investments that we make in the areas of innovation, technology, AI, and so forth. Cristiano, if I'm not mistaken, he mentioned the allocation of resources, and that's essential for Vale. When we decide on our investments and projects, we bear a huge responsibility. And gas, it's an important element, not only in terms of technology investments, and briquette was something that was a result from that research that improves the efficiency of blasting furnaces and at the same time reduces in 10% the CO2 emissions. And as well, for instance, in the Middle East, especially Oman, Saudi Arabia, and in the Emirates, in addition to other projects in the Southwest Asian, that yielded good results because gas becomes cheaper. And how could we think about projects like that in Brazil? Well, there's the first problem. Gas is very expensive. Then there's an issue of distribution of energy. So if we don't sort out this technical, operational, financial, and economic element, if we don't sort this out, it will be very difficult to implement these projects in Brazil. And with regards to Europe, I spoke about Middle East, keeping in mind that China is responsible for 60% more or less of the consumption of our metals from Vale, and in nickel, when it comes to nickel, 60% is produced in the US when it comes to Vale. And we look at Europe, we have some agreements that are ongoing, about 50 agreements. But in general, we need to take the geopolitical aspect into consideration. The situation right now is complicated. I hope it gets sorted out short term. And that's important because we need to initiate projects, in Europe to recover the metal industry in Europe. So we are debating some potential projects, and in the meantime, I hope that the geopolitical situation improves so that we have enough security in the regulatory framework in Europe. For instance, just to mention, why do we have a lawyer in this panel? I'm a vice president, but I focus also in the legal aspect, regulatory aspect, and science and environment. So Vale covers many of these aspects. We have been discussing in the Congress the cavity degree that can improve in 26% our production of Vale. We are already one of the largest producers in the world. So imagine if you have a better legislation on cavities. Imagine how we can progress, how many new projects we can start. So I believe Europe has a very good regulatory framework. We want to implement these projects in Europe, and when the time is right, we will be ready to bring more value to Europe. Thank you. And now we have here a question from the audience. Good morning, everyone. I come from Indonesia. I work in mining company, and we cannot talk about energy transition without talking about mining. The Indonesian government has a strong legislation for mining and to add more value to the economy. So minerals are at the center of this topic. So I would like our MB Valdemar Nascimento and as well as Sami from Vale, I would like to ask you about how can our country progress in terms of public policies to industrialize this chain of value, removing Brazil not just as a net exporter of minerals, but to make it the center of technological advances. Thank you. That's a very relevant question. Indonesia is one of the countries in which Vale is present. We have one of the largest deposits in development in the world. And so we are paying close attention to that. And allow me to go back to resource allocation. So Vale right now has an iron ore with the largest percentage of iron in the world, and we want to have a flexible portfolio. So within my duties, I need to take into consideration any aspects related to transportation. The main competition we have comes from Australia. Between Australia and China, it's just 7 days for a ship to reach its destination. But when it comes to Brazil, it takes 20 days. So how can you close that gap? How can you cover that cost, that competitive disadvantage? So I need to have a better distribution of high-level minerals and having blending projects. We need to do that in India, for instance, in the Arab world, Indonesia. Somewhere where I have infrastructure, resources, and above all, a safe regulatory framework to make my investments. So Vale wants to create the mega hubs in partnership with the metalworking industry. We want to invest in energy. Briquette is the main product that we create because it allows for circulatory mining. We don't use any water anymore. We don't use any tailing dams, and when it comes to Indonesia, it's a very important country. Vale, alongside with the government, wants to invest. That's nothing new. If you are curious, if you want to know more about the economic reports of Vale, you can see the timeline for investments and the direction we are taking. So Indonesia is a very interesting jurisdiction for us, and we hope to be in a position to invest there very soon. I'll take the opportunity to mention that this debate regarding strategic minerals, it's very recent. But when it comes to the Congress, the past few Congresses that we had, we need to keep a Congress that is liberal in terms of economy. And by doing that, we can provide a safer regulatory framework for better investments. So the entrepreneurs, they know that this topic is very important. So we want to debate this in more depth in the Congress, just to allow any entrepreneurs and investors, to allow them to have the conditions to make safe investments in a consistent manner in our country. Thank you. We have another question from the audience. Good morning, my name is Marcelo, I'm a lawyer. And to mention, I'm from Rio Grande do Norte, from the Northeast, and just like Bahia, we are one of the greatest producers of renewable energy, but we are facing a problem in terms of infrastructure. So how can we deal with the increased productions? And because of that, we are facing some problems when it comes to the production of renewable energy, especially in the coastal areas of my state, and that creates problems for investments. And this has been reducing the availability of jobs as well. I've also been to Bahia because I work in many projects that are taking place there. And I would like to ask you, are there any policies in terms that address the issue of transmissions? There are some projects that are being brought to a halt because we have that problem with the transmissions. And the government, the federal government, needs to support with the costs to make use of energy that could, for instance, be used by the data centers. The government has been promoting the investments from the private sector in the renewable sector. So we increase the production, but the demand is mainly in the southeast. But if the end result, the problem is that the utility bills become more expensive for the consumer, and no government wants to do that if they want to win an election. But I would say that the current way things are done is wrong. The Brazilian consumer has been the one that has been responsible for supporting the investments, but we need to find a more rational way to do things. We need to plan this better. The Ministry of Energy understands what has been financed, what has been funded, they know what's being built, but there are no counterparts to ensure that the transmission lines allow the energy to be distributed. So if you have a consumer and if you want to avoid increasing the energy bills for the consumer, you need to find that money somewhere else. We have another question from the audience. Good morning, Luis Fernando from Grupo ON. I would like to ask a question to Secretary Juliano. In the past 2 months, we gained 3 permissions from ONS to build 3 data centers. So we're talking about 15 billion of investment in Rio, and I would like to understand how Rio is preparing for this new reality. Let me reinforce this. Every type of incentive given by the state, we need to have the approval from every other state to concede a tax benefit to support these initiatives. We received a proposal 1 month ago from Rio Grande do Sul. We are studying the proposal. It was focused on one state in particular, so altogether we decided that this should be incorporated in a national plan for development. We know that states like Rio Grande do Sul, Rio de Janeiro, São Paulo, Ceará, they have great potential to receive these data centers. Ceará, you probably know, they have a huge project ongoing, and the other states don't want to stay behind, of course. But to avoid a taxation war, so to speak, there needs to be an agreement by all states. Rio has been working on a proposal to incentivize the sector to receive these equipments. We're talking about large infrastructures. We're talking about acquiring the equipments for the data center, so it's not just infrastructure and construction and all of that. We're talking about as well the technological equipments. So this is being debated and it's being accepted by everyone. We have a huge potential in terms of gas in Rio de Janeiro, and we want to incentivize that. We want to incentivize that power matrix to increase the possibility of having more data centers in the state. All right, so I wish we could hear 2 more questions, but we're running out of time. Let's do that during the lunch break or after lunch. Please take the opportunity to dialogue, to have a conversation, and we also have the day of tomorrow. Thank you so much, everyone. Juliano, Marcos, Cristiano, Sami, Breno, and Carlos Marques. Breno and Carlos Marques will stay with us, and I think the MP will also stay with us. Juliano, Cristiano, and Sami, please put your hands together for them. Thank you very much for your inputs. Please take your seats here in the front row. I will ask for our assistants to guide you. And then now let's move on to panel 2. Let me remind you that the next panel will last 1 hour. After that, we'll have our lunch break and we'll come back in the afternoon. So this is the last panel of this morning. The topic is agribusiness and food security, challenges for agricultural production in a sustainable manner in a world whose population keeps increasing. So let me also mention that we are live for the entire world online. I believe we have about 5,000 viewers following us. And for panel 2, I would like to invite to the stage our MP Arnaldo Jardim. He was the vice president of the... He is actually vice president of the Parliamentary Front for Agribusiness and Secretary of State for the Agriculture from the state of São Paulo between 2015 and 2018. Also, we have Mr. Doria, the ex-governor of São Paulo. I would like to invite as well José Batista Jr. He's the president of the JBS Group and JBJ Agro. And also Irajá Silvestre. He'll join us in 2 minutes. He's a senator and president of the Parliamentary Front for BRICS in the Federal Senate. The details are similar to the ones I gave you for panel 1, so you'll have your timings in front of you, your countdown in front of you. We'll have some room then for questions and answer the questions, and our president will make the initial remarks, So please proceed, and then we'll move on to José Batista Jr. So would you like the microphone? Okay, let's save some time. Let's start with Junior. I've been always asking him, Junior from Freeboy. You don't need. We don't need any presentations. We know who he is. He has his own company. He has his company in the state of Goiás, a very successful business. And to make the most of our time, let's just move on straight away to Junior. His presentation has a video and slides as well, so please take the stand. Thank you very much, João, for the invitation. On behalf of President Temer, I would like to thank you for being here and wish you all a good day. So I'll start my presentation. My name is José Batista Jr. because my father is José Batista Sobrinho. Sobrinho meaning literally nephew. And as an homage to him, we created this name JBS. I was born in Anápolis, near Brasilia, near Goiânia, in 1960, so I'm 65 years old now. I was the president of JBS for 25 years. We started, or my father started in 1953. We used to slaughter one animal per day. Nowadays, we are representing Brazil. And we are now a multinational. We are the largest producers of animal protein in the world, in many countries, in Asia as well, Europe, the US, and in the UK as well. We have operations here in England.
A gente vem fazendo de 70 anos, junto.
We've been doing this for 70 years in the agribusiness in Brazil. We love doing this. And I wanted to show you a video to give you an idea of the agribusiness and food security. Can I play? For us, borders are just a start. Frontiers are just a start. We have the soil, air, water to turn the world our home. In 100,000 hectares, where the future of Brazilian meat is sold for 50 years, feeding the world, generating prosperity, building a quality legacy. At JBJ, Agropecuária, we never stop. People are the soul and the heart of our development. We invest in every talent, every dream, every idea that drives excellence. Training, supervision and technology, because we believe that efficiency is found in the combination of intelligence, human intelligence and innovation. We seek excellence in every stage, with responsibility going beyond. We preserve the soil, we reforest with passion, and we look after the soil as a treasure. Our farm, the future takes shape. We challenge more than 25,000 females, and they produce superior cattle every generation, guided by precise nutrition to make sure every animal has its maximum potential revealed. In confinement, there are more than 350,000 animals, resulting from a model that goes beyond quality meat, transforming resources using organic fertilizer. At JBJ Genetics, we unravel the secrets of DNA, accelerating the identification of excellence, becoming a reference in the main 3 programs of evaluation. The investment are constant in genetics, infrastructure, training of the team, and this has transformed our reality. We are now taking another important step with JBJ Ranch to make sure the strengths of Brazilian genetics can drive the way into globalization. There are no borders for those with a mission. JBJ Agri Business. Our mission is to feed the future. Thank you, everyone. JBJ are the initials of my name, José Batista Jr., as we did with my dad at JBS. So I know we don't have a lot of time, but I'd like to sit down and we can carry on talking and debating, talking about agribusiness, food security. I have a few things to say to you which might be interesting. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, João Batista Jr. We are then now going to call our next speaker, the Federal Deputy, the President of the Parliamentary Front for Agribusiness, Arnaldo Jardim, who was also Secretary of State, São Paulo, in 2018. Good morning, everyone. It's a privilege to be here with all of you, friends. I would like to greet João Dória for this initiative and João Dória Neto as well for coordinating this. It's a privilege to be here with Senator Irajá has just arrived. It makes me very happy to be here with all of you. Welcome, Irajá. So I have a great responsibility here and I'm very enthusiastic about it, which is talking about the agribusiness in Brazil. Saying that this has been one of the sources of partnership between Brazil and the UK. The agribusiness in its dimension of logistics, which is more than the act of planting and sowing and harvesting, the agro that has its infrastructure, its logistics linked, going through the challenge to make sure that the results arrive where they should. This goes through a very sophisticated industry of equipment. It also goes through partnerships in the fertilizer sector, and we have had several British companies present, several companies from the UK being partners with us, and the Brazil we celebrate, which has in agriculture its most dynamic sector. Please allow me to give you a few numbers. In 2024, we were able to move 1.3 trillion reais. That's what agribusiness produced in what we call our harvest year. In the 86 billion reais in the agribusiness, in our livestock productive with 450 billion. If this wasn't enough, these such expressive numbers, we wanted to share with you the happiness of highlighting that Brazil, the Brazil of 20 years ago, importing food, was able to advance its production of grains, its production of protein, which meant we were able to evolve this evolution in more than 450%, expanding just its occupation of areas, only 33%. It's magic. It's not magic, but it's a Brazilian miracle to increase production fourfold and only increase 30% the occupied area. Where is the secret? Productivity. related to production, which means genetics in terms of livestock, as shown by our last presentation. But above all, I wanted to highlight here something that makes us deal with very calmly, which is the debate regarding sustainability and environmental challenge. And this is imperative here in the UK, but also for us. In 10 days' time, we will host COP30, and then we'll have an opportunity to demonstrate what are not only our environmental commitments generally, but also what has been incorporated and practiced in the agribusiness sector. A few data, a few numbers. Were expecting a specialist here, but I wanted to refer to that. What's the size of Brazil? One of the biggest countries in the world, as you all know, 851 million hectares. Our planted areas, which allow us to be the biggest importers of soya, of orange and coffee and cotton amongst all the and globally being the biggest exporters of agricultural products. The whole area occupied by sugarcane, by timber, soy and corn, occupied by our production of fruit, which is very significant, doesn't add up to 10% of our national territory. If we were to add the used area for livestock, then this would come to 30% of our territory. With the area designated to livestock, and then once again I refer to entrepreneurs, as Junior said, we have been able to go from extensive livestock to intensive livestock. Those images of confinement is more than volume. It means a smaller occupation of land, which it has a reduced environmental impact, which is following on the example of other countries. Brazil, from the point of view of natural reserves, has maintained 66% of its original reserves, and this is beyond this preservation. This is unlike anything in the world. We have an environmental legislation so strict that, differently from other countries in the world, our forest code makes it compulsory. And President Michel Temer was a very advocate of this, and then as a deputy and then as president, having such strict legislation in our forest code establishes, and it is mandatory, and we have gone beyond the rules in more developed areas in the south and southeast, making sure that every territory owned by individuals as their own space, 20% of it must be preserved in its original forest. 50% in the center-west, and in the Amazon, each individual property, Irajá will know that, 80% must be preserved, and only 20% can be used for economic activities. This is something that makes us very proud, and has turned Brazil from exporter of only agricultural products to being able to feed more than 1 billion people in the world. So Brazil, which has 220 billion inhabitants, feeding them and million people, and feeding the rest of the world. And up to 2050, we have more than another 2 billion people in the planet, which brings a challenge to increase the offer of food in 40%, not only due to the increase, but to feed them better, especially in less developed regions like Africa, Asia. We know the limits in Europe to increase production. We know the limitations in the American continent to increase production. So Brazil will need to be a big supplier of food, and we are preparing ourselves not only in taking care of the land, but innovation and research and productivity to make sure that we can meet this challenge in development. And that's why we have been working, and I speak not only on my behalf, but on behalf of FPA, which is the Agribusiness Parliamentary Front, which I'm a vice president of, which is the biggest parliamentary front acting in the National Congress. The Deputy Omar is a member of our FPA, Senator Irajá also defending the causes. So our ways to develop our genetic development, we are now reformulating and improving the patent and cultivar law to guarantee international investment and partnership with companies that compete with us. We are trying to recover degraded areas. We are taking this discussion to COP, seeking partnership to restore these areas. We want to advance in precision agriculture and digitalize the field, and also invest in bioeconomy and bioeconomy and bio-input. So we have been working hard on the act of bio-input. I would like to say that Brazil is already one of the big economies where the bio-inputs have a great participation in the fertilizer sector, which is where the use of bio-inputs is growing around in the world. Also highlight how happy we are to be here and to be able to integrate the forest with livestock and harvest. We have started having 2 harvests a year. We produce all year through due to this integration with forests and livestock and harvest, and we accept the challenge of energy transition. And we want to open a dialogue and debate in international forums. We have been asked, Brazil has chosen the way of ethanol, of biodiesel. We have been putting forward a project with the support of the parliamentaries here present, so to help us evolve in biodiesel production and ethanol, decarbonize the fuel, decarbonize diesel as well. We have a project at the Senate, SAF, Sustainable Aviation Fuel, to produce biobunker, maritime biobunker, and also we have a very promising landscape, very dynamic in terms of investment to incorporate biogas and biomethanol as tools to compose the project of decarbonizing natural gas. And all these principles are present in our agenda of environmental sustainability. And I talk on behalf of Brazilian farmers in fighting illegal deforestation. We do not accept such practice. We are criminalizing such practice to make sure that these can be dealt with, and highlighting that whatever is happening in terms of deforestation is not happening where the production is happening. It's happening where we have irregular occupation of those areas. And we are working to fix that, to make sure that the formal agricultural areas do not suffer illegal deforestation. I know I've gone beyond my allocated time. have gone a bit more. I will allow myself to ask Carlos, please, could you request these to be shared? But I wanted to offer LIDE in the name of all of you here. We are hosting COP. We have just finished based with the support of all the scientific and think tanks in Brazil in relation to agribusiness, Fundação Getúlio Vargas, under the coordination of our COP president, Ambassador André Collard, and the ex-minister Roberto Rodrigues, integrating the activities at LIDE, and we have put together a group of proposals.
And if I may allow, I'd like to formally give you our contribution from the parliamentarian front for cattle farming and agribusiness. We want to take this proposal of sustainable agricultural solutions and production with our contribution and the Brazilian contribution to energy security and food security for the planet versus, and we are very happy to give you this document. Thank you very much indeed.
Só aproveitar para dizer, nós vamos hospedar isso no site do LIDE, vou pedir para a Ana Lúcia, que está aqui, que é a nossa diretora de comunicação, já fazer isso e também compartilhar com o Francisco Maturro, que foi secretário de Agricultura e Abastecimento, e é o sucessor do nosso Roberto Rodrigues, que continua como...
So we thank all our panel members here, and I'll give the floor to our colleagues. And please add this very important report here to our website, and we'll be back here with the panel. Now we have our next speaker. I would like to invite here Senator and President of the BRICS Parliamentarian Front in the Federal Senate, Irajá Silvestre. Good morning, everybody. It is a privilege to be here and meet our former President Michel Temer, and I greet all business people here, all the professionals, all the members of the audience, and it's a great honor to participate in this LIDE edition upon the invite of our former Governor João Doria and João Doria Neto, who very competently are here. So Breno as well, it's a pleasure to see you. And I'm very happy to be here with my colleagues, MP Elmar Nascimento from Bahia, MP Arnaldo Jardim, who has told us in a very detailed manner what we can understand in this topic, and I'm very proud to be here with João Batista Jr., a very important Brazilian businessman, and it's a great pleasure. I was there participating in an event in Goiânia with him, and I greet all of you here as well. Very well. In fact, Brazil with BRICS, in my view, represents and provides great opportunity to Brazilians. And it is clear that we have many challenges in this activity. And we recognize it at a respected activity in its efficiency, economic dimension, as it has been shown here by my colleague Arnaldo Jardim. And in my view, we face two challenges for the agribusiness to continue to grow and to expand economically with a work towards food safety, which is so important to our country, and exporting countries such as Asia, Europe, and the US. And I think we need to look at logistics. So logistics presents a great gap, which is preventing Brazil from growing in the south, southeast, and the Midwest. If we have comparative data, so the cost of logistics comparatively with other countries, it's high. So 1 ton of soy in the US transported costs about $20 1 ton to transport, and Argentina, the same soy is transported with $40. In our country costs $90 US dollars. So we have that discrepancy in relation to US and Argentina, for instance. So Brazil is very efficient in terms of production, but the moment in which one has to ship is a tragedy because we lack logistics infrastructure. In this manner, I would like to draw attention to what I feel to be one of the solutions, which is our Brazilian Mississippi, which is unfortunately underutilized. This is located in the Mato Pipa region, is the region of Maranhão, Piauí, Tocantins, Bahia. We have this Mississippi underutilized. In the US, 80% of the production is transported by the Mississippi River. And in Brazil, we have these rivers which are located in the northeast. We have the Tocantins River, which flows towards River Araguaia. It gets to my state, Tocantins, and then it goes to Vila do Conde in Pará. So it's over 1,000 kilometers of rivers which are underutilized due to certain works that need to be done, and also the very famous Pedral do Lourenço, where they need to work as well to prepare the river with some 40 kilometers to allow us to be able to flow goods through the river, and we would be able to implement our Mississippi River in Brazil, and then we could flow 40 million tons of grains. Just reminding you that currently through the ports in this area, we transport 60 million tons of grains, so we could double the production and the shipping of goods, notwithstanding the fact that we would provide a service to the environment. Just to give you an idea, Governor João Doria, vessels with a caravan of vessels, they can transport the equivalent of 280 carriages in our railway, and we would remove a lot of trucks, a lot of railway, and that would save lives, and also we would have less trucks going through our roads, and we would also have less emissions, in addition to a much, much lower cost. It would be a lot more competitive when we compare with road transport and rail cost as well. Therefore, the solution to utilize the river, which is ongoing to be implemented through a PPP, which the federal government has decided to approve. So it will be a PPP of this river, and I called it the waterway of the north. So it's the waterway of the north, contemplating these states in the north and northeast. So this is a priority, this waterway, and the BNDES has been hired to perform the modeling of the concession model for this waterway. Therefore, this project, which has been discussed and planned for 20 years, I think finally, with the participation of the private sector, we will be able to implement it. In addition to logistics, another theme which I'd like to draw attention to you all, ladies and gentlemen, and our MP Arnaldo Jardim has mentioned, is storage. So storage in Brazil could improve. So storage means something that is very fundamental to the rural producer. They need to wait for the best time to sell. If they can't store, they are vulnerable to market flows and price flows. So we know that there's demand, there's supply. So in Brazil, currently, we only have 15% of storage capacity for all soy production, grains, and vegetable production. So, but in Argentina, they already have ability to store 40% of their production. In the US, another competitor, 65%. So in this manner, I believe that logistics and also storage are the greatest challenges preventing agribusiness to expand in Brazil, notwithstanding other themes. We have approved the licensing law, which was preventing the viability of new production areas in Brazil. And in terms of regulation, I would like to draw your attention to two themes which are very relevant. The first one, in my evaluation, is key to unlock agribusiness in Brazil, is the theme pertaining the land regulation. So currently we have so many issues to resolve, so many challenges. We are still dealing with land regulation and providing deeds in Brazil. So in my state, Tocantins, just in my state, we have 20 million hectares. We have 4 million hectares of productive areas, which are areas of the federal government, under the federal government, and these smallholders haven't got their deed, so they haven't got the title to the properties. It's the same to say that you have your house, but you don't have your deed for your house, Governor Doria. So they can't, for instance, take credit, agricultural credit, to improve their property or to provide economic activity. Therefore, this is still a challenge. So we're discussing that in the Senate. We have a bill in the Senate, which I tabled as the author, and we are going to promote a social historical justice, providing deed to these smallholders. And this bill has been passed in the lower chamber, is being discussed in the Senate, and in the next few months we hope to make steps forward. And lastly, I will try to keep within my time, and I won't be as daring as my colleague Arnaldo Jardim. I could not mention another very key theme, which is Bill 296419, which means providing more land to have more food and more jobs. So it creates resources, financial resources to finance Brazilian producers, so international banks will be able to use land as collateral for investment or for credit to produce. And it will create a new business environment, and it will allow partnerships and the sale of land to foreigners. So since 2019, this is being restricted by the federal government, so it has been prohibited of foreigners to buy land. So up to 2009, you could do anything. We could have very foreign investors. In Brazil, we had several plants in several areas, and nothing damaging has happened. Up to 2009, we didn't have any invasions from anyone. But the issue is that in 2009, this restriction has been put in place. Therefore, for 15 years, we are not allowing foreign investors to buy property in Brazil and land for agricultural means. And we have this hurdle, and we can't have therefore this investment. So this bill aims for that, to allow, with certain restrictions, the purchase of land by foreign entities. And we also resolve another issue, which is generate a new credit environment for Brazil, for rural credit, because banks need collateral. And obviously, as you know, you can offer your land, so you have your asset as your land, your private property. Therefore, we will have 50 million reais that could be invested and can be invested if once this bill goes through. And the worst of all, we are even helping other competitors outside Brazil, because if we don't invest in Brazil, but the world needs food, what's going to happen? These investors, they're going to go to Argentina, to Paraguay, they're going to the African continent. Therefore, we are moving them away from us. And we are not bringing these investments because they are not welcomed, although they do take place in an irregular manner through society arrangements and some combinations where they avoid the legislation and then invest in a different way. So in my view, it makes more sense for us to deal with this with responsibility, accountability, because this is taking place, and obviously enabling better mechanisms for us not to have our sovereignty compromised. Obviously, we are not going to sell border areas, and we're not going to sell any areas in the Amazon. Those will be protected, limiting to 25% of productive areas per municipality. So these are three key protection placed in the law. So thank you very much to allowing me a few more minutes, but I think this bill is extremely important and I wanted to share with you. So thank you very much indeed for your attention. Joan, please. I will open up for debate. So first of all, thank you, Senator Irajá. Your explanation, your presentation was fantastic. And this is a topic which has been described in a very precise and courageous manner. And President Temer, we had this prohibition from 2009 onwards, this prohibition of foreign investment. So this is a very outdated view, and it doesn't make sense anymore due to the explanations you provided to us, and people are circumventing this with other means. And we obviously want to have a productive land, and I would like to emphasize the competency of the presentation provided by Senator Iraja, that other countries are making the most of these opportunities and expanding their investment in agribusiness with a lot of competency. So Paraguay, for instance, President Santiago, I've met him at my home for dinner. He was very impressive with his views. He's very intelligent. He has a great background. He studied at Columbia University. He speaks English very well. And he has been transforming Paraguay in 2 years of government. Dear colleagues, Elmar and Arnaldo, he has transformed Paraguay. It was a very very unseen and unexploited country, and now we can see the evolution, the economic growth, much bigger than Brazil, because he left past paradigms with misconception, which doesn't really work for Brazil. So, Senator Iraja, congratulations for your presentation. We need that for Brazil. Clear, pragmatic views with the right regulation and looking forward towards the future, overcoming leftist Marxist views which are not fulfilling the needs of the population to those who need income and jobs.
Okay, thank you very much. Now I take the opportunity once again to give you the opportunity to ask further question. In the meantime, I would like to say that we have 9,000 viewers who are following us via TV LIDE, so that's a very good indication. So let's start this debate by asking Junior a question. He's leading he's a leading example of how the agribusiness can develop in our country. I would like to ask you, how can we ensure the increase in the food production without accelerating the pressure on natural resources and to avoid deforestation? How do you articulate the two things? How is that possible within the context of agribusiness in Brazil? I would like to take the opportunity to say, and to Arnaldo, I came here to talk about energy matrix, etc. But I need to point out that a larger energy matrix that we have in the world is food. Without food, there are no other conditions to produce energy. Without life, we can't do anything. So animal protein, food, it's very important. It needs to be considered when it comes to energy matrix as a whole. It's really important to mention this because people forget that. Animal protein and vegetable protein nowadays is more important than ever. To give you an idea, we now export to the entire world. Brazil today represents 60% of bovine based foods to the entire world. So we have many countries in Asia, etc., buying from Brazil. The livestock farming industry is very well integrated nowadays. To give you an idea, in 1 million of hectares, you can produce 1,000 heads of livestock. So nowadays we are progressing a lot. So in 10,000 hectares, you can produce 1 million heads of livestock. So back in the day, we used to slaughter animals with 5 years that were 5 years old. Now we can do that after 2 months. So you can see the evolution that we have brought to the agribusiness. We have a project to insert Angus, the production of Angus beef in Brazil by creating a hybrid between one of our local species. So the meat that's a result of this hybrid bovine, it's of high quality and can compete with the meat that is produced in the US. It's one of the best meats in the world, and we can do that. We can produce this meat when the animal reaches the age of 14 months. So nowadays a heifer can be slaughtered at the age of 14 months, something that was impossible in the past, and Brazil keeps progressing in that department. So food security, as I was saying, really depends on genetics. I really believe in the genetic aspect. We guarantee food safety that way, and we keep training people on the education, on the culture. We've been working on that because the people, they are the ones who are handling the produce. And Brazil has also been leading the world when it comes to animal sanitation. So nowadays, we became free of certain diseases without the need of further vaccination. So the WHO has mentioned that. So Brazil keeps doing that and keeps exporting animal protein to the entire world. And for us to continue producing, Arnaldo, it's not true that we are accelerating deforestation. No, Brazil has large amounts of productive land. And to give you an idea, our family, we have 200 million hectares of area, and 40% of 200,000, is in a situation of preservation. So we now have a 60% of productive area, and we can produce a lot within that area. So that's because we are optimizing our production. We are one of the main producers of protein and in agri-foods in general, and the world, nowhere else in the world there's land, sun and water. Brazil is the only place where the three things are available. That's why we are really blessed as a country. So that said, I wanted to say that we are in a very good position. Brazil has a great future ahead. I'm even sad when I see some Brazilians or hear Brazilians say negative things about Brazil. It's a fact that we can't resolve every single problem in one go, but I think Brazil should invest more for now in infrastructure to distribute the Brazilian production. That's the main problem we have nowadays. But for instance, we have a large amount of energy production. We do produce energy, but the problem that we are facing today is the transmission and distribution of energy. We don't have that at the moment. So Brazil is behind when it comes to that area. So we need more investments to ensure that Brazil can progress and as such can feed the world in a more efficient manner. Let's move on to Breno Silva. He has a question. Thank you, Carlos. I would like to reinforce, Carlos, the pragmatist element. We need to have pragmatism when it comes to the development on Brazil, and as such we need to understand our shortcomings as opportunities for investment, free from ideologies, to ensure that we can reinforce our growth. So it's great that LIDE can promote dialogues on that department. I have two questions, one for José Batista Jr., another for Senador Irajá. José Batista, from the perspective of a large company, you are the largest producer of animal protein in the world. You have a partnership here in the UK. And the UK, after Brexit, they still use the EU legislation, but then they will have their legal framework updated independently. And the livestock production is one of the elements that still face some restrictions. The restrictions go to even to the affects the financial side of things. It's kind of a greenwash operation in a sense. How do you approach then that here in Europe? How do you plan how do you tackle these issues? Is it just a matter of having Brazil in a better position, or do we need to promote public dialogue? Because Brazil has stability. I know when it comes to the bovine production, sometimes deforestation can be a problem, but we have the technologies to address that. And greenwashing these days, with new financial mechanisms, this should no longer be a problem in Brazil. But we need to ensure that the produce reaches Europe. So from your perspective as a producer and a large company, do we need more dialogue? Do we need more investment? And to Senator Irajá, we spoke about reforms when it comes to structural investment. So I'd like to reinforce that logistics is a huge challenge because there isn't one single solution. We need many solutions. And there are environmental aspects. Sometimes the debate in that department lasts 20 years because there are ideologies involved. So how can we overcome that nowadays? How can we ensure that the producer is taken into consideration? Not so much the large producers, but the medium-sized producers. They are very affected by that. Let me say this. Your question has to do more with the market reserve, market share, than anything else. So the Brazilian products these days, and the industry is one of the better equipped industries in the world. You can look at our industries today, and you can see they are at the forefront of technology in terms of food security, the quality of processes, etc. Europe, for instance, has always always had a problem with Brazil when it comes to traceability, but now Brazil is way more advanced when it comes to traceability. And now febre aftosa as well. We nowadays, one thing that we managed to sort out was the foot and mouth disease in bovine livestock. We managed to overcome that without the need of vaccination. So we have a very sophisticated system from the point of production to the final destination. So nowadays, our meat can be traced easily. So you know where the animal came from. We can do that nowadays. So it's a problem of protectionism. It's not so much a question on deciding whether to buy or not from Brazil. It's the countries we export to have some protectionist measures in place to protect the local producers. Breno, thank you for the question. I believe that logistics may have two solutions. First, PPPs, I believe that's clear to everyone. Also, that's clear to the government. They have been increasing the numbers of PPPs. For instance, when it comes to the roads, we have more PPPs for strategic roads, which are important as well to distribute our produce. For instance, in Mato Grosso, Goiás, Bahia as well. And in the past 3 years, there were 21 federal concessions have been made, but we need to do more. So I believe that's one of the ways to go. And secondly, we need to invest in a model that is the most competitive, which is the use of waterways, as I mentioned. So we have this large river. It's a God-given gift, but we are not making the most of it. For instance, the USA, they do that, and they are an example of how we can do things in Brazil. It becomes cheaper to when it comes to the logistics, and it's more environmentally sound, and it doesn't require large infrastructure projects. The river is already there. We just need to do some adjustments, but then we have 7,000 kilometers of river that could be a solution to address the logistical problems that you have pointed out. When it comes to storage, one of the things we could do would be the bill that I have promoted, of which I'm the rapporteur. So we should give access to foreign entities to invest in the areas. Keep in mind, once again, we still have protected areas. There's a limit of 25% of the productive areas by municipality, and there are mechanisms and criteria that protect our land. It's better to have this law than to keep things as they are right now, because right now there's no legislation whatsoever, and we are not receiving any sort of investments. The investor simply goes to Paraguay or Argentina instead of coming to Brazil. So I believe this bill could also help sorting out the storage issue, because the international entities that really want to make the investments in Brazil want to invest in large producers and medium-sized producers. So these producers that can create these silos to have a larger storage capacity, they don't have the public funds to make that investment. This investment has a payback after 15 or 20 years. So international banks, for instance, they do want to make these investments, but they need safeguards, they need guarantees. So that's why we need to update our legislation, and I believe this bill will sort out this other issue. So the issue of storage, and again, it just opens up a new universe of investments with lower interest rates, with better deadlines, and I believe it will improve everything. Thank you, Senator. We've got time for a final question that I will ask to MP Jardim. Could you let us know what technological innovations are transforming the agribusiness in order to get to a more resilient and sustainable model? There are some investments, and we'll talk about that in COP. We want to have a genetic improvement for animals and for plants as well. So we need to carry on. We have really important acquis in Brazil. Embrapa is a really new technology. It's a research center for tropical agriculture. So we need to expand that and improve the operations there. Secondly, digitalization. We have very modern equipments being used, and that represents an increase in production and productivity. When you plant, when you harvest, etc., For instance, all the orange production in the São Paulo countryside can use drones to detect any sort of pests. So when there's a large incidence of a certain pest in a given plant, the drone goes there automatically. They can also capture the dimension of the problem. So it's almost a customized solution for each production. So that's another instrument that can be very beneficial. And finally, what Senator Irajá mentioned, so the issue of storage. When it comes to negotiations, that bill is really important. That bill also helps with the conservation of foodstuffs. So nowadays, what we produce and what gets to the consumer, usually from point A to point B, there's a waste of about 20%. So with better technologies for monitoring as well, we can improve the reduction of waste. So these are three aspects that can really promote a better level of productivity. Thank you. So we are coming to the end of the morning session. We'll come back after 2 p.m. to this same room. So I will invite you to join us in our lunch at Abraham room, I believe. And so our assistants will guide you there. Please keep your badges and then come back at 2 p.m. So thank you everyone once again for being here. The lunch is sponsored by the Itaú Bank. And also thank you to our co-chairman from LIDE, João Doria. Have a good morning. Thank you very much.